All right, everybody, it is 10:02. We're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. So welcome again to the Nemesis V3 implementation call. This is the first one of 2025. I feel honored to be the one hosting today. It is January 8th. We have a great agenda for you today. First up today will be John Britt with stakeholder introductions. Mr. John Britt, do you have one for us today?
I do. Um, I'm going to replace your share.
Mhm.
Good morning, all. So, as always, I get to do the stakeholder introductions. Why do we do them? Is to get to know others on the call and build connections that lead to collaboration and get some new ideas for hobbies, maybe see what we have in common, get to spotlight some people for 30 to 45 seconds, and it's just kind of fun. So, we always ask the same questions. What do you like to do to relax or unwind? And the answers are woodworking, camping, being outdoors. What were some interesting facts or jobs? Worked as a dishwasher or and in a manufacturing plant and mowing lawns. Others may not know, massage therapist for 15 years. And how long have you been in healthcare data? Uh-oh, there's three answers, 18, 29, or 8. That's because I'm talking about 3 different people, and I'll get to that in a minute. So what do you like about your job? One of them likes the diversity day to day, seeing how meaningful data is changing response in patient care, and they like to troubleshoot problems. Is there any guesses? So they are Terry Evans, Fort Dodge Fire Rescue EMS, he's an EMS supervisor. Jeff Jacobson for EPCR Fireworks, Director of Business Development, and Shellen Holloway, GMR Systems Administrator. But I don't have any pictures from them. They didn't upload any. Um, if you would like to be introduced, you can click on this little QR code. And I will also add the link in chat as always. And Casey, I go next. So if that's okay, can I just keep going?
Please do, please do.
So here's the picture of that. My final picture that I shared. This is the group picture from our annual meeting. So what I wanted to go over is the actual form that I'm going to share with you, just to reinforce how easy it is to fill out this form. Really, it's your first and last name. It's stuff we know. I'm just going to skip through the rest because there's something specifically I want to show you. I have changed the final thing to make it clearer. So a couple things, because I've seen this happen. I know at least one of you submitted pictures, but I didn't get any information from the form. So if a new browser window opens, don't forget to return to this form and click submit. And I made it easier. There's just one thing to click to put pictures. It'll open this dialog. Which is of course slow because I'm sharing. So added this, please rename files to include your name or put them in the file description. It's very easy.
John, you're muted, sir. There you go.
Me, did it? Did anybody hear all of that or any of that?
Yeah, we heard most of it, just until you talked about uploading picture.
I don't know why it muted me. So here you can put your file, the description as your name, submit, and then this is what I see on the back end. So I can see that's when I uploaded earlier, but it'll say John Britt when I get it. But these are what I typically get. Yay. And Amanda, she followed directions. Thank you, Amanda. But others, I don't know who they are. But I still have to go back to the form and hit submit. Now I'll actually have all of the other information. So if you've not been introduced, please do that. And for the three of you, if you would like to redo it and submit your pictures, I will reintroduce you again in the coming weeks. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, John. Appreciate it. It's always interesting to learn about the people we were working with every day. All right. Next up, we have Jen
Good
with
morning,
the
everyone.
maintenance
Happy
update.
Good
Sorry.
morning. Happy New Year, everybody. Oh, no, that's all right. The maintenance update is always nice and quick. They will be on the third Tuesday and Wednesday of every month. And I actually have added a link for anybody who'd like to keep track of that. And the third Tuesday and Wednesday of January, of course, is the 21st and the 22nd. And then just so that everybody knows, it does say it on the website, but the maintenance actually runs from Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time to Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. So if you experience issues during the maintenance schedule, you don't need to open up an IT ticket. If you experience it outside, and that could be with your reports, that could be with trying to access some of your data or anything like that, just know it probably has to do with the maintenance schedule. And as always, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out. And I will go ahead and pass it back to you, Casey.
All right. Thank you for that, Jen. Very good. Anybody have any questions about that? Keep an eye on the chat as well. All right. Next up, we have Dr. Clay Mann with proposed plan state schematron recommendations for pre-hospital blood administration.
Hey, Casey, thank you. And I apologize, I'm off camera today. I had some simple eye surgery a couple days ago, but I look like a little bit of a raccoon, so I'll stay off camera. I do want to talk about what was the proposed plan for the 4 blood transfusion schematron rules that we decided on as a group up in Park City during the ancillary meeting regarding developing the DMC developing a document helping folks to understand the best way to document blood transfusions in version 3.5. There was a call during that meeting and then after words when we were talking on our V3 implementation call, was there any way to be able to work those 4 schematron rules into the release of version 3.5.1? So we worked diligently with that idea. Spoke with the DMC, with Amber in Colorado and others about making that happen. In some, the decision was made not to include national schema, those 4 elements as national schematron rules with the release of version 3.5.1, but to follow through with our earlier plan that was made in Park City for us to develop those 4 schematron rules like we do custom national elements, develop them standardized with a standardized approach to each of those 4 schematron rules, releasing those to states and to vendors for implementation at the state levels. And when we were finalizing these ideas with the DMC, there was the thought that perhaps those 4 rules could be a little bit better developed, and before they go into the national schematron file, there are perhaps some modifications that could be valuable. So the idea was to release them in a standardized format, allow states to implement them, see if there are revisions or other modifications that need to be made to those rules. And then in 6 months, we would provide a special release of the national schematron file that would have the finalized rules associated with blood transfusion included in those. So this, the idea was to utilize this much like we do with the national custom elements, putting them out there, letting people use them, making sure they're working well, see if there are modifications that need to be done, and then finalizing them into the national Schematron file. So that's where we are with that decision. So Jen's going to talk in just a little bit about the rollout of 3.5.1. But we will be rolling that out without those 4 rules in the national Schematron file. But we will be rolling out the standardized 4 rules for use at the states and at the vendor level. And I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
There is a question from Ann Bosbrink in Arizona. We're working to unmute her right now to allow her to ask her question.
Oh, there it worked again. I don't know. It was working and then it wasn't. Maybe I did something. So thank you. And I must have been off for too long. I was off for like 2 weeks, except for a day for the holidays, because I cannot find for the life of me where the raise your hand button is on the screen.
Oh.
All over the place. And I'm like, I know it's someplace. We use so many different meeting programs. I'm like, I know it's somewhere. So I apologize. I couldn't raise my hand. I just had to interrupt. I have a question, Clay, about the national Schematron rules. And I mean, this is partly because I couldn't go to the NEMSIS meeting. So I realized, look under React. Anyway, sorry. These national Schematron rules that are being proposed, I've been on a lot of calls, but are they, you mentioned something like they're kind of like custom elements. Are they going to be ones that are national optional rules? Like if as a state, if we do not want to have those included in what is applied to our state. In Arizona, we haven't really done much with blood products yet. And therefore I haven't had much to say in the conversations of things to consider, but I could just see it being something where we discover something later that maybe isn't part of it, and then that causes all kinds of confusion with agencies. So I just wanted to see if this was something that, are you saying it's like a national custom element or something that we could not have it potentially in our Schematron, or if this is something that's going to be popping up on agencies, whether or not it ends up being what our scope is, or if we've added something else to our scope that isn't one of the things that are approved as far as what should be documented.
Yeah, great question, Ann. Yeah, so these will not be in the National Schematron file, so they will not be rules that are required to be provided. So we're just going to kind of standardize them as potential state level rules and give them to states and vendors. The idea there, Ann, is just to kind of help ensure that there's a standard approach to the rules that are applied to blood transfusions. But there will not be a requirement that states implement them.
Okay, so not just at this time, but in general, that's the, okay. Thank
Right.
you. That helps me.
You bet, Ann, you bet. Hi, Chad. Hey, I see your hand up. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And you on the react button at the bottom, if you hit the react thing that looks like a heart, it'll give you the option to raise a hand with that as well. But no, I just wanted to jump in and so one, yes, what Clay said, absolutely. But I think the goal down the road, Ann, is that these would actually become national rules. I think that's the goal from the DMC, is that these basic blood documentation pieces, which is just that you perform blood transfusion as a procedure and that you document the specific blood product in the medication area. The goal is that down the road at some point, whether that's 3.5.2 or 3.5.6 or 3.6, whatever the next version is, but is that at some point, the goal from the DMC at least is that right now is that these would become national rules, but that can't happen initially. And so that's why they would be state. So that's what we're hoping for, to get some consistency in the basic blood documentation moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I can see your point. It'd be hard to have everybody have different national rules. My only issue is, I think, with things like this, when you say it has to be documented, and I get it, like I've reviewed those files too, where it says, use this, only document this one time, but these 3 times. I have a feeling that over usage, things that specific might become problematic. And then people start ignoring the rules. I mean, we can have, I know this will be a further discussion down the road, but that's kind of, I like the standardization. I really do, because I don't want to have to think of the different things. And I think this is a good thing to be able to add. I'm just a little concerned with when it's super specific, it can be great if everybody follows that. But if there's differences, then it becomes noise.
Yeah, great comments, and that's one of the reasons why I think we decided to kind of hold off on making them rules that were in the national file. I think we can spend some time and kind of revise them, as Chad mentioned. I mean, the goal is to have them in the national Schematron file, so we'll have time to refine. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good. I had a question for you guys. Is the goal to have like a small group of beta states that actually implement this in the schematron and then provide feedback to add it to the national schematron? Or are you expecting all states to add this to their schematrons? It seems like it would be a smart workflow to have like a set of beta states that would add it to their schematrons and be able to provide feedback on the results of that versus everyone implementing these workflows if it's not exactly, if it's going to change anyway.
Amber or Chad, that's a good idea. What does the DMC think?
I don't know that I was trying to look and see. I know Amber, I think, was going on vacation, so I don't think she's on today. But from our discussions, there really hadn't been any discussions about a few states implementing these and trying. I think the approach so far from the DMC has just been that what we're talking about right now is the basic blood documentation, not the multitude of other things that could come with it. Just the, hey, we had a blood transfusion, and here's the blood type. So the one procedure, and then whatever the type is in the medication. So there hasn't been discussion, Kelly, of having some states beta tested or this and that. I think the discussion has been down the line that, look, if you're transfusing a blood product, this is what everybody should be documenting as a basic set so that we can get the data on that for NHTSA and whoever else needs it there. But then all of the other stuff right now is really just a local or a state component that they would have to figure out themselves, with at some point the DMC trying to tackle all of those additional blood pieces down the road. But I guess from our perspective at this point, and we would have to have some more discussion on it, but we haven't had a perspective that this should be beta tested or any of that. The perspective has been, hey, today NMSIS has the elements to capture these things. So we just need to put out a document that says best practices, this is what it is. And we need to push for rules that basically say this is how it should be done. And that's part of the reason why our push is at this point is to make those rules for the blood transfusion and the specific types of blood be national rules as opposed to state rules. That way it's consistent. That way for the vendors, you know exactly what the rules are. It obviously wasn't time to make that happen with 351 or any of that. But I don't know if that answers the question or solves anything, but I think that's where we were at right now.
I think I would just like to put out as a suggestion of using like beta states to test these rules before we implement it across the board for every state. And the reason why is because if we get it wrong the first time out the gate, then every state's going to have to implement a new schematron. But if you guys are working together as a beta and testing and sharing that information, then if we do get it wrong and we need to make tweaks to it, I think it'd be much easier to update those beta states versus every state that's wanting to participate in this. And then also, if we do go forward with that, when we do implement at a national level, we know for sure that those will work really well because we've had the opportunity to really vet the changes. And then I think it's just kind of a more streamlined process instead of every state trying to test this and offer their feedback all at once with different requirements. I don't know, just putting that suggestion out there.
Yeah, I think, and definitely we can take that back to the group. I think the challenge facing all of us right now And Eric, if he's on, may be able to speak to this now or later. But I think the challenge is that kind of the time frame or time crunch, as I would put it, in that there's maybe a little bit of power right now at NHTSA and the ability to be able to get some funding, significant funding pushed towards the way of blood transfusion stuff by EMS. And so, that's what we're trying to overcome is how
Right.
can we do this and how can we do it quick? And so I realize I'm saying it seems simple from us that here's what they are, but I completely understand that there's a lot more to it than just being simple. So we can definitely take that back to the group. And I know Chip has his hand up and he's been a big part of the conversation. So
I
I would
do want to
encourage him
address,
to jump in.
there's a couple of comments that are in the chat. Clay, one of the questions from David Saylor, what is the expected distribution model for the rules? Like how are these rules that we're working with the DMC on, how are they going to be distributed out or found? And then Judy Whitfield from Texas asked if there was a proposed implementation date for these, when those rules will be available.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll answer both those questions. Let's see if Chip kind of has more thoughts about the actual rules and see if Eric wants to speak. Yeah, then we can talk. We can just talk about kind of what our plan is for rollout. Chip or Eric?
I can speak up real quick about I don't mind being a test state. We're maybe not a bad situation because we have some IFTs that are doing blood products kind of as a continuation of something that's already there, but we've got 4 air medical transport services that do it on a regular basis. 3 of them are using Iheanacho products, so we could take some validation rules that we've already built and are kind of playing around with a little bit, and have them build it in their systems, and then we kind of see how that Schematron works, and then Zoll is the vendor for our 4th air medical transport service, and I'm happy to work with them. We've had a good relationship to see if that translates over to other software, and if it does, I guess that's a good case to say, yeah, it's working with 2 different vendors, and hopefully we could kind of, that would be a test case there. I know I built my additional rules. And I think one thing we identified is we just needed to tweak a little bit about prior to arrival, because for our ground units, the protocol just changed, but I think they still have to kind of continue something that started in a sending facility. And so we just need to think about that a little bit after the holidays, if we need to make any adjustments to the rules that we've already built. But we're happy to kind of kick that off, and hopefully only working with a couple of organizations, we could do some testing in a pretty short amount of time and see if the rules that we built work, kind of in the data entry side, and then also in the Schematron side, and then see if that translates over to another vendor software fairly quickly. I think I don't want to totally speak for Zoll, but we've had a pretty good relationship with the folks that we work with there on a regular basis. So I'll offer that up anyway.
And Chip, I'll jump in real quick, and Clay, this may answer the second question. So one, the Blood Product Administration best practice guide, the holdup on that document right now is just that is approval by NASEMSO board. Obviously, the DMC is a committee of NASEMSO, and so the NASEMSO board is we're waiting for approval on that. And I think they were supposed to meet next week or this week, and it got postponed a week. So that should be something that happens here, and as soon as that's approved, that should get kicked out. But I do want to make sure and mention that once that comes out, under that, there's currently only 4 Schematron rules being proposed at this time. 2 of them are pretty simple in nature, in my opinion, but I know that doesn't mean anything. And it's basically that if you document blood transfusion or transfusion of a blood product in procedures, then you have to, in the medication area, document what that actual product is, and then vice versa. If you document something actually in the medication area as a blood product, then you have to document the procedure of transfusion of blood The other two came from Chip, and there has been a little bit of discussion on this outside of the group in different meetings that have come up, and that's just related to being able to document it only once. So they're four very basic, simple rules that I'll take it back to Amber and the rest of the DMC and figure out a process potentially of how we can roll it out in a few states that maybe are doing this a lot, or what the next steps might be on that.
Yeah, Chad, thank you. Yeah, so I think that kind of answers the question. Yeah, so Judy, I think we'll clearly we're going to try to get this out this month for sure. We'll work with the DMC. To answer your question, David, I think we would just release this as pseudocode for 4 Schematron rules, and we would just release it as in this meeting, a future V3 implementation meeting, and also in the DMC call, just making sure that folks know where on the website to access that small file. So I think we'll make sure that we can get it released and make sure everybody knows about it, and we'll follow the lead of Chad and the DMC and Amber as to the finalization of those rules.
Okay, so they'd be released as, like you said, just the pseudocode, and then they'd have to push all the buttons on their state systems
Yeah.
to get the Schematron updated.
Yep. I think so. And depending on the product, yes.
Okay. And so they'll be potentially inconsistent in terms of rule numbers and whatnot. So if
yeah, I see what you're saying, David. Yeah, as releasing this just in an effort to kind of standardize what each of the states do, and I think it's a good idea to maybe Chad's going to go back and discuss the idea of maybe having beta states or something like that.
Yeah, I think along those lines, if you could send out with that pseudocode a set of PCRs, sample XMLs that say, these 5 should pass the rules and these 6 should fail with these particular messages, just as a check on that, because that's a little concerning that they're gonna have to do their own implementation.
Okay, so what you're saying, David, is the pseudocode plus test cases. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So then they'll be able to hopefully run, depending on the product, I guess, but just say, these 5 pass, no messages, these 5 get this message, and then so on.
Okay, I'll pass that along to our team. That's a good idea, David. Thank you. Any other questions regarding the document that the DMC is preparing, or the Schematron, the rollout of the state Schematron rules? I like the idea, Chad. I think you mentioned it as a best practices document. I think that's a great way to look about what's coming out from the DMC.
Hey, Clay, this is Randall. I was going to discuss that in the NASEMSO update. I could discuss a little bit about the document while we're on the topic, if you'd like.
Oh, great. Yeah, please, Randall.
Sure. So, Chad had really kind of nailed it on a lot of the fronts. This was an approved technical guidance document for the blood products that was approved at the DMC meeting. And really the purpose of that guidance document was to provide the states with a standardized method for documenting the blood product usage to facilitate improved data analysis. So the next step is the NASEMSO board, and that was postponed 1 week to January 16th. On top of that same document, though, we are still working within the DMC to create like an EMS clinician guidance document, so it wasn't so technical. So we had kind of the technical portion figured out here, but we also were trying to provide a guide for EMS clinicians to do documentation following that technical guide. So that is also something that will be coming through from the DMC in the near future. I just wanted to make sure that we just to stay on topic with it. So thanks, Clay.
Great. Thanks, Randall. Any other questions? Fantastic. I think I'll hand it off to Eric, who has also been working on many fronts in regards to blood transfusion documentation. Eric, are you on the call?
I am. There we go. I can do video. So a couple things on documentation. This blood transfusion thing has been a bit of a challenge here. We have a lot of people, and I'm just going to be very blunt, taking ownership at different parts and pieces of this. Um, we have the document that was worked on in October at our annual meeting. That is the document Randall's referring to that's going to the NASEMSO board for approval. I am very concerned about that process. I need to talk with Dia about that. This is the first time in my 5+ years working with this project that we've ever had a document go to the NASEMSO board. This has been vetted through all of the different groups that we work with. We had state directors in the room, state data managers in the room, vendors in the room, and everybody agreed on the way ahead. I am concerned about sending something to a board now who would potentially make changes or modifications to it and what that would do in terms of putting it back through the process. That being said, I have a separate document for EMS clinicians that'll be going out most likely late tonight or tomorrow. It'll be very, very similar in terms of the actual documentation piece to what Randall has put together for the actual clinician, but it will go out with NEMSIS and the Blood Coalition logos on it for the actual clinician. If NASEMSO chooses to create a secondary document similar to this, that's fine. I have no problems with that. But if that goes through the same board process, that's going to be somewhat timely in getting it out, which is why we're trying to get this document out so that clinicians can get this in their hands and understand what the documentation process is going to be. So looks like two separate documents for the first time, at least in my history with the NEMSIS project. Can't say I like that. I'm going to be working with leadership at NASEMSO to see if we can't figure out how to prevent that from happening in the future. But this is not just happening with documentation, it's happening with the blood program in general across a lot of different fronts. There are a lot of different blood non-governmental organizations that are aligning in different camps with the blood administration in the pre-hospital environment. Almost all are positive. There are some concerns, and there have been some folks that have expressed those pretty vocally. So a lot of different things going on with blood and blood products in the not just documentation arena, but in the overall healthcare system, I'll say. So stand by for more information on that. We'll send the clinician document we're working on out. We'll make sure everybody gets copied on it. It should be aligned almost perfectly with what NASEMSO has for the clinician guide. We just have to add one sentence that I think, Randall, that's not in the one that you sent out the other day, or the two documents you sent out the other day, regarding the making sure that the actual the route that it's administered is documented, which it should be with any medication as part of it. But I think it's probably worth putting that in there. So that's what I have on blood transfusion and documentation. I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions.
Looks like we have one in the chat, Ryan from
Ryan, so we actually had, outside of documentation, we had a call last Friday, I think it was. Amber and Randall were on the call. Representatives from the Blood Coalition, John Kramer, Eric Bank, myself, Gam from our office, and Jeremy. There's multiple documents, I think, that need to be developed here. The one is the one that's going to the board. That's sort of the technical document for the data managers and the techie people. That one should be voted on next week at their board meeting and then get disseminated for everybody. The clinician level document, there appears to be two. One is being developed by NEMSIS and the Blood Coalition. It should go out late tonight, tomorrow. And then one that NASEMSO will be developing. When that goes out, I guess will be up to their board. Don't know the date on that one. Then I expressed concern over overall documentation, not just overall documentation of blood products. If you recall, for those of you that were not at our For those of you that weren't at our annual meeting, this is somewhat of a trade-off. This is a fast way to get at the counts and look at the actual utilization of blood transfusions being done because we can't look at it today. And we had, Steve's not here, but I'll throw him under the bus. Steve, our state director from Florida, said, well, I have that for Florida. And he got up and called his data manager and he's like, no, I don't have that. And then he called Peter Hintevy and said, how many blood administrations we have in Florida? He goes, well, I don't know in Florida, but I have. And the number that Peter was doing in his program exceeded the number that Steve had for the whole state. So some different um, there's some different methods being used for documentation. So to answer your question, right, is yes, there's going to be extended data set for blood, but the only way we could get that done and get that done in short order was to create a new version, automatically add it to the existing version and hold it up. And everybody thought that was just a bad idea. And I was very vocal about that. And I think Chad said it right a few minutes ago. There's opportunity for funding while this is the hot ticket. I don't think we want to wait a year from now to actually get some good hard level data at the state and national levels. So that's why we're moving out in sort of an interim step, which is phase one, get the basics with what we have available to us, and then phase two, what data elements need to be added for an overall blood program. I'll stop there. Chad, you have your hand up. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. No, just a couple of quick questions and I know Amber's been involved in conversations. We've had a couple, but on the document you guys are putting out on the clinician one, has that one been around? I mean, how long has that been developed, and was there the chance to get that in front of the DMC before? And based off of that, I guess my question would be is what benefit, if any, or should we be working on a second clinician document? Is that going to confuse things if there's two that go out, or is the one that you guys putting out, does it conflict some with the best practices document that we're putting out, the current one that's there?
So the current one going to the board, it will not conflict with that at all. Um, the second document for the clinicians, um, my preferences are be only one, but if NASEMSO wants to put out their own, I mean, I can't stop them from doing that. I can tell you that Randall wrote the procedure section that will be in both. So he did that with Chris and Clay and others. And so that's going to be verbatim with the exception of one sentence that's been added. And I'll talk with Randall and make sure he knows what that is. So they will be aligned. The one from the one Nemesis and the Blood Coalition's working on just gives you a little bit of background on the blood programs, and it gives you an opportunity to reach out to someone specifically on developing and implementing a blood program that's not in the other one right now.
Yeah.
That's the only variation. I can assure you, Chad, they will align perfectly. I will never let dual documentation go out that's not aligned. We'll fight that battle to the nth degree with everybody we need to make sure they're aligned. So far, that's not been a problem.
Perfect. Thanks. So it sounds to me then like if they're aligned, there may not even be a reason or a need for the DMC or NASEMSO to put out a clinician document.
And that's entirely up to you guys. I
Yeah.
don't have anything in that.
Yeah.
Um, I understand. That's what I said. I prefaced that earlier. There's a lot of people, and I don't know how to say it. There's a lot of people kind of staking a claim in blood and blood transfusions in a lot of different ways. And I get it. I understand it. It impacts so many different parts of what we're doing. And it appears to have, based on the research and programs that have implemented, a significantly positive impact. So, I get it, but timing is here. Timing is of the essence for this is one big part of that. And, I think we're fine in terms of alignment, Chad. I'm not concerned about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Kelly, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to mention too, in regards to the additional fields that we've had several critical care agencies reach out asking if we would extend that and add to as like a national custom element, some of the blood product fields that we have. So I just wanted to put that out there that there definitely are a lot of critical care agencies that are interested in learning more about what that would look like. and just their concerns with like where all those would be I guess there's concerns with duplicate documentation within medication and procedure too. I don't know. I can forward those concerns over to you, Chad or Amber, if you want. But so far, we've just kind of been waiting from guidance from you guys on how to instruct
Yeah,
them.
that'd be great, because one of the things, and Eric mentioned it, and that was the key right now, is just to basically say, hey, what does NMSIS have already available that we can capture this in? We know that there's a whole slew of additional things related to blood documentation that people want and state wants and agencies want. And that was the next iteration of the DMC, was then to try and gather all of those additional things and try and come up with an even deeper best practices that not just includes, hey, we did a blood transfusion and it was whole blood, but also includes all the other stuff people want related to that. So definitely send that stuff over to us, because this is a long-term project, I think, or a long ongoing piece. And we're just trying to hit the very first quick one so that we could actually get some data and numbers out for maybe some grant dollars.
Yeah, I think that they would definitely appreciate that. I'll get that information over to you, Chad. Thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to what we did with approach with CPMIH, is collect for those who share, for the vendors who share, and Kelly, thank you for sharing. I know Zoll, ESO, others have specific blood questions that they do. Zoll does a lot of critical care transports as well. When we look at their numbers and we've talked with them, that accounts for a big part of their market for blood administration. So, Chad, I think what we'll do is we'll take the same approach and pull all those things together. And okay, what are the similarities? And what's out there on the fringe that maybe we don't need? I think the challenge is going to be like we always have. Everybody's going to want everything. So we have to remind ourselves that we're designing this for the clinician and not for the epidemiologist, the purist epidemiologist who, is interested in whether it was a left-handed white male with a limp. Um, eh, Somewhere in there is the comfort zone for data that needs to be collected. And I think that's where certainly I think Randall has already had or been a part of conversations with the medical directors from the NASEMSO medical directors. We have the blood banks, the blood NGOs, and we can certainly consult with them to make sure that we're on target. I mean,
Eric, I think the other thing that should be, you mentioned it right there, but I want to reiterate it from that side. It's not being built it's for the clinicians and this and that, but from our perspective, at least from the DMC guys, is what we're building is kind of a national standard. And so it's just the same as everything else with the national standard. Is there's national pieces that are, I would probably say, more generic in nature. Here's some national pieces that we feel need that we can capture from everybody across the country. And then states and even agencies may need to do more and may want to do more and still can do more. We're just looking at not a one all be all, everybody has to do this in their state and this is the only way. We're looking at this is what we can gather nationally that seems to be consistent and will get us that data that we need. And then other people can still do additional things that they need to do and go deeper if that's what they so choose.
oh yeah, you're spot on. And the other way I look at that too is for programs that are starting up, here's the data that you should be thinking about collecting. Um, we have a lot of programs that are out there, but we have far more to start up if this thing goes the route that it seems to be. So for those folks, are they thinking about what they need to collect? It's almost like the CPMIH model. What do you want to collect? Well, I need to collect everything. Well, you realize that's thousands of elements, right? You don't need to collect everything. There are certain pieces that are important, and do people know what they are? This goes to my angst with not having sort of a national guidance document on developing a blood program within your EMS agency. I know there's some background work out there. There's people you can call and contact, but to me, that would be a next good document to write. But
Eric,
yeah,
we have
go
a
ahead. I'm
question
sorry.
from Chip too. We have a question from Chip.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I haven't read the recent documents, but it's just kind of thinking through the practical aspect of this. Um, where do we want to set the cutoff line of it's time to document this? And I'm thinking sort of more of the patient coming from a facility going out to another facility. You know, do we have a crew put down prior to arrival if somebody got a blood product and it was finished before they picked the patient up? And we don't count that. Sort of like we don't count a cardiac arrest if you go pick up somebody that was in cardiac arrest but isn't when you pick them up to take them to maybe a higher level cardiac center. Do we count it if blood was started in the hospital and now I pick it up as a paramedic and I'm continuing the blood product, maybe even issuing a second unit during transport? I'm not sure we want to count the stuff that's in a hospital because that isn't reflective fully of pre-hospital, but it seems like we'd want to count the stuff that the EMS providers actually had their hand on while it was being administered kind of, in the pre-hospital setting. But it seems like in the guidance document, we do need to address the don't count this, but count that area. Or, in general, and we're trying to avoid this right now. In the absence of guidance, people make stuff up and you can't get them to change after that. So.
It's a good question. And the way that was discussed in a few meetings was it would be managed the same way you're managing a medication or a drip for an interfacility transfer. How do you count that? Do you log that as prior to arrival? Do you just log that as you're maintaining it? Um, I, I think that's going to be the challenge. You're right. And part of that is not knowing exactly how many people are being transported from, well, we can get close by talking to the vendors, but looking at some of that at the national level, understanding what that interfacility arena looks like for critical care, specifically where blood would be given, is a bit of a challenge. So I think that's the part we're going to learn in this phase 1 piece. And unfortunately, that might have to be addressed in the second round of this. I hear you about once you start a practice, it's difficult to, or almost impossible to change it. But I don't know that, I mean, I'm happy to entertain language or something for it, but I don't know that I have enough background on that right now to say if an ambulance goes in to pick up someone at a level 3 trauma center to transport them to a level 1 trauma center and blood was started, what you're saying is how do they document that?
Well, it's more of, I guess, let me simplify this. I think we should not count any blood administered if it was completed before the EMS crew takes over the patient and leaves. And again, going back to the cardiac arrest scenario where years ago we had a lot of cardiac arrest, but it was because you'd get an IFT or somebody had a cardiac arrest, it had ROSC, and then you go get them from a small facility, take them to somewhere that's got a PCI center, and the crews are putting that down as cardiac arrest. Well, they weren't in cardiac arrest for the transporting crew. It was a prior event. And I think we don't want to count the prior blood administrations that occurred just in a hospital and it's done when you pick them up. Just like I wouldn't put down, I might choose to put down, like some really essential medication, like they had certain amount of amiodarone before I started my transport if that was really relevant. But I think we just want to try and not count that because that may bulk up the numbers and not be reflective of what EMS is actually doing right now. So I'd like to suggest that if EMS didn't have their hands on the blood product at any point in the transport, then they shouldn't be counting it.
Okay.
Either they continued the medication, they started the medication or the bloods, count those, but not if it was already done by the time they got to that patient and they took over care.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, to
It does.
else?
Let me go back and look at it and yeah, let me look at it.
All right. All right, if we don't have any more questions on that topic, thank you, Eric, very much for being available and answering all those. Let's move on to Jen with the V351 rollout update. Jen, if you may, please.
Absolutely. And what a great discussion. I love when everyone gets involved and starts talking and ideas get passed around. It's part of what, and most of you who've worked with me for a while know I'm kind of a nerd about it. So it's what makes me so excited to be in this part of the field and the documentation and all the good stuff. So that brings us to version 351 rolling out. And the update is the documents with the updates from the candidate release, which there were 8 updates, have been put into the Git repository. We are in the process of updating the website and the access and the links and that front portion. And that should be completed by January 15th is our current estimate when that'll be completed by. And you'll notice that version 351 has the date release of 2501 15 to reflect that. So we think all the links and everything will be updated by the 15th. So here we go, right? We've got the final version of 351, hoping that we don't have any critical patches or anything that we got to do that are found later that weren't found during the candidate release. And we should have those resources all updated within the next week. Are there questions about the rollouts? Anything about version 351 that anyone would like to ask? Oh, Sam, go ahead.
Hey, Happy New Year. So just quick question, with the official rollout date being in February, does that change when NASEMSO starts accepting 351?
No, so the plan is still, the rollout should be done by January 15th. So we're still mid-January, so we should still be on track for starting to accept data in June.
Thank you much.
Kelly, I think you put your hand up next.
I just wanted to confirm that the changes that you guys are implementing will be on the spreadsheet that you guys maintain on your system too. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So all of the spreadsheet resources, the PowerPoints, the PDF files, the change log, the data dictionary, the highlighted version of the data dictionary that we put out this time, those are all in the process of being updated. That's why even though the developers are done, they have produced it and sent it over to the Git repository. Now we're working on getting all of those noted and making sure that all the cross references, checks and balances, all that good stuff is done.
That's helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Anne?
So about 351 and the different dates, is the timeline, the graphical timeline that's posted on the website, will that also be updated? Because I was just looking at it yesterday to share with the meeting I have tomorrow, kind of talking about when Arizona is going to do whatnot. And at the same time, I looked at just to see which software vendors, if any, had completed, because it still says January 2025 on that timeline, but none of the vendors so far had completed what do you call it, compliance testing for 351, which is fine. So if we're changing the dates, is that timeline going to be adjusted just as part of the documentation update?
So the specific timeline for version 351 that's on there. So I don't know which timeline you're looking at. If you're looking at the general guidance schedule, that is just a generalized idea of what updates to the NEMSIS standard would look like. There's that one in there, right? That we made sure to add additional language that this was just a template. It is not designated like dates or anything like that. And then there's the version 351 timeline that's in there. And we're on track with that timeline. So none of the vendors can start their compliance process until we release that final version, right? They can play with it in the candidate release. They can prepare as much as they can. But until we've come out with that quote unquote final version, they can't start their compliance process.
Right.
And we don't even have the test files or anything posted for the version 351 yet.
Okay, yeah,
So
and oh, sorry, I'm looking at the one that it says roadmap to NEMSIS version, and I think it's just easy for people to kind of look at it and like understand. But
yeah.
right, it does say up at the top that it's an estimated timeline. It's just, do you have something like this that's visual that we can show. It's just a nice thing for meetings, honestly, because I just say, hey, look, this is when we're kind of expecting things to happen from NASEMSO's standpoint. And we do follow you guys, within those ranges. Do you have anything like?
I'm trying to pull it up on my computer
And,
right
and
now.
otherwise, that's fine. I'll just remember not to show this because even though it's an estimate, I didn't even read that part, to be fair. So.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
and
and that's, yeah, that's one of the reasons why we always try to be, so I'm looking at the roadmap, update candidate release, final. I'm looking for the one with the dates on it.
Yeah, I just went to 3.5 revision and when will these changes take place or when will this happen? And then that link goes to it's the 10-year
To the
plan. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, the 10-year plan. Right. So that's the one. Yeah, that one is the
yeah,
I
Jen,
don't
can
know.
you show
Let
the
me take
3.5 one? Yeah, share the 3.5 one just so she knows where to look for that one.
And
okay,
I
yeah.
realize you guys, we ask you to do so many things and you can't necessarily update everything and have 7 different graphical representations of the different things that are going on. But I just want to know if this is gonna be I don't want to say idealistic, but whatever, plan, but won't be updated for actual, that's fine. But then I know I need to make something that's kind of visually, because as you guys probably know after knowing me for this long, I go in circles when I talk, and it's just much better if I show a picture. So I'm going to try to make something like this I can update for our state if this isn't going to be updated.
So the roadmap right here, the one that's at the top, that's the one that's specific for version 3.5.1. And that's the one
Can you show it, Jen? Yeah.
Yep. I'm hopefully did it change the screen on the Zoom? Zoom sharing is always a little bit different than.
Yeah, it did, Jen, but zoom out.
But zoom out.
Zoom out. Yeah. I'm sorry, where is this then?
Okay, nope.
See you later,
So
Jen.
you
I don't want
go.
to spend everyone's time on this call. I just
No. You're absolutely not. These are the kinds of questions that we should be getting asked. So if you go to the when will changes take place, which is the same place you went to find the other version, it says the roadmap. It's that first link.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You want me to share, Jen? I know you're on a small computer today, I think.
Nope, that's okay. So that's this one here. That's the roadmap. And then this one down here, really is an estimated standard versioning guide. It is not expected to be something that holds. We added some verbiage down here in 2023 to make sure, or I'm sorry, in April of 2024 to make sure that it was clear that it was just an estimate. Clay, I know this is probably something that we could take back to the team and kind of look at possibly revising it to meet any recent changes that we've made and maybe, take off 2023 and 2024.
Yeah, we talked about that, Jen. So we'll put that on the priority list. Can you just go back to the timeline for 3.5.1 and just real quickly just make sure folks know where that's at?
Absolutely.
And maybe we can just take a quick look at it so Ann can get a feel for when vendors are expected to potentially begin testing for compliance to 3.5.1.
Yep, absolutely. So on there, that is so you go to the NEMSIS website. Let's just start all over. So on the NEMSIS website, if you're here, you go to using EMS data, drop it down to version 3.5 revisions. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, when will changes take place? And there's the version 3.5.1 estimated timeline and project roadmap. And when you open that, and you can also download it, of course, it's got sorry, there we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. It's got the roadmap, and we'll minimize it just a little bit. And so this is the part that we just completed. Here in January, we're doing the final release of the standard, and that's when the software vendors can start to develop the new standard, and we can start receiving. And we estimate about June. I haven't heard of any states, and states, if you want to email or contact us and let us know if this is going on, but I haven't heard of anybody that's planning on doing it June 1st, right? Jumping right away over to version 3.5.1. That doesn't mean it won't happen. We just haven't heard of that yet.
Jen, we've got one that's got times on it, right? Where's the other? There's another version of this with.
This one here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the candidate release is complete, final release of standard, phase 2 of development. So that would be our development here at the NEMSIS TAC. That is the updates to our warehouse, the getting the dashboards set up and ready to accept data and display data and things like that, right? That's phase 2. And then phase 3, and I apologize, I have a little screen in front of phase 3. Phase 2 ends around May, which is why we try not to accept data until June, when we're actually ready to display that data back to you.
This is helpful. So I'll just basically to sum up for my end users, they're just going to care that there's no way we will start accepting 3.5 in our state data before June. And it won't probably be then either, but that way they know how long they have till they have to think about it. So.
Yeah.
And I know I talked to, sorry,
yeah.
Clay.
No,
I
I was going to say that's a good way to put it.
With that same, they were like, oh my gosh, on June, now we just finished 350 and on January 1st, we're going 351. And so we have spent time talking with some folks about, oh no, please don't think that that means January 1st. So I get it. Clay, was there anything you'd like to add for the version 351?
No, it looks like Ridgely has a question.
Oh, Miss Ridgely.
Hi, I'm just asking for a friend. Are you still accepting 3.4?
You're asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, just definitely for a friend. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this sounds like FBI here. Yeah, like, our system will still receive it.
Thank you.
So yeah, hopefully that answers the question for your friend, Ridgely.
Thank you very much.
All right. And if there's no other questions, I'm going to pass it on back to Casey.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jen. So next up, it looks like we have Randall Eimerman with the NASEMSO update. Randall, take it away.
All right, thank you, Casey. So today's update, we kind of covered the some of the DMC agenda items that really was discussed about the technical guidance document. So I'm just going to kind of skip over that portion since we've discussed it. With the extended data definitions, we've been working really hard on e-response 11, which is the type of transport delay. It's completed, going to the DMC once again for approval to be added into the extended data definitions document. We're also working on the e-response 12, which is the type of turnaround delay. So this process does take a long time. There's a lot of voices in the room. One thing that we are trying to be really clear about when we're having these discussions is that, the definition that was there before that might be very relevant to other data elements, we're trying not to change those extended data definitions too much. And the other thing that we're finding with this sometimes when we go through some of our extended data definitions is that some of the fields may not necessarily fit. So that's something that we're sort of looking at and trying to run some different reports just to kind of keep updated with different field values as we go through them. With the custom data elements, Eric had kind of mentioned before, our focus really with these custom data elements is our blood transfusion documentation. We're working with lots of different subject matter experts. We have a list of different custom elements that are coming out. We're trying to watch the vendors, make sure there's not existing elements that we're just missing. So it really is a big group effort. It does take a lot of time and patience sometimes to pull all those members together. So we're trying to put together a nice presentation to say, here's what we have, what is our priorities, and then what could be released maybe in an update versus being custom. So there are a lot of people looking at that, and we hope to have some custom elements created rather quickly. That's my update for today. Any questions?
Very good, sir. Thank you. The next up, we have Lauri with the 2024 record submission deadline. Lauri, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. And I want to say a big thank you to states, and I know many vendors have been part of this process as well, and making sure that we have a complete data set and have all of your records in by that February 14th deadline. So thank you. And I know we often get calls of, are you going to hold it open longer? And at this point, we have no reason to. We're receiving Pennsylvania data currently. We should be caught up with them next week. And that was kind of the last state we were worried about. So it does not look like we will be holding it open. So we hope to hold to that deadline. And I know all the states, I think at this point, have been reached out to by either Amanda or John on our BDA team to set up some one-on-one meetings with you to look at the numbers of records in our warehouse for 2024 compared to what you think you submitted, and even looking down to the agency level of how many they're receiving, how many the state's receiving, how many we're receiving. So we have found a few small gaps there and are working to fix those issues. So we really hope that all of your data is represented correctly on our dashboards and reports as we prepare those for the end of the year. So thank you so much. And any questions on that? All right, I'll pass it back to you, Casey. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Lauri. All right, next then is Monet with the monthly report update. Monet, if you would please.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Sorry. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I would like to let you know that the NASEMSO monthly report is available on the website. I'm going to go ahead and click on the December report. And I just provide this report to provide some transparency on various activities that the NASEMSO team is working on. We also would like to let you know that this report is a public document. You are welcome to share it with your team and just to stay abreast of various things that we've been discussing and working on. And one of the things I want to mention about the report at this time is this section. Well, first of all, let's stop here and just look at some of the new research that's available. We have a couple of reports that were released in December, so please feel free to review those documents. And then I wanted to show Anne this section here with the link. So when you're looking for those documents that talks about the version 3.5.1 changes, you can simply click on this link here, and then it will also take you to that website page with those resources available. We are definitely always working to improve this document. So if you have any suggestions of things you would like to see in the report, we'd be happy to include or consider including that information. And that's enough out of me. Are there any questions at this time?
Hey, Monet, I do have a quick question. This is Ann Boss from Arizona.
Yes.
So with can you go down to because yesterday I was looking at the, what do you call it? There, vendor compliance or testing. Can you go up a little bit, please? Thank you. And I realized, and there's a more detailed one on the website that has like, when, for example, I don't want to pick on ESO, but they're red on this, okay? So what I realized when I was looking at the website is I can't figure out why, and there's nowhere to like click on why. I mean, maybe that's on purpose, but are we supposed to just reach out if we want to know? I mean, I'm not really concerned, but, sometimes you do feel concerned. So I don't know how to determine what's wrong or what's going on.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I'll actually defer to Jen to provide a response. They're basically on probation, but Jen, would you like to answer that question?
And there are different reasons that a vendor can go on probation. And if you need more information, please do reach out. That's probably the best way to do it, because there are, different Part of it could be that they, miss their 2-year compliance by a few days, or it could be that they didn't attend the required 70% of these V3 calls, or they didn't attend the annual meeting. So there's multiple reasons they can go on probation. Probation, for the most part, unless there's a technical aspect to the issue, is attending the next next 6 V3 implementation calls, and then the vendor comes off of probation. So most vendors successfully go through their probationary period and then come out and they show up as blue, which is how they show up on the website again. But if you want to know specifics or need to know specifics, I'm more than happy to share those with the states.
Okay, thanks. I mean, rarely, but sometimes I do have agencies that will ask me because they will dig around a bunch and find things. And I just wanted to be able to give them a response. So I'll just tell them that we can figure out more information if they are concerned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jen, for providing a response, and thanks, Anne, for the question. And as you review the report, and if you see any that you have questions about, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Back to you, Casey.
All right, thank you, Monet. I know she puts a lot of work into that monthly report. Fantastic. So, try and get my screen sharing again. There we go. The next upcoming meeting, V3 call meeting, will be Wednesday, January 22nd of this year, just so everybody remembers that. And I believe we just had a public training, so the next one won't be until next month. Other than that, we will go to open forum. I think Jen had something to bring up here for that. Otherwise,
I do. I have some good news for the states and for the state receive and process vendors. In December, we did an additional maintenance period, I think you remember. And so on December 9th, we increased the change log additional info section when you submit your state data sets to 4,000 characters. What we did is we pulled all of the change logs for the last couple years to see how many went over or under the 255, and 4,000 would fit all of them that have been submitted within the last 3 years. So we went with 4,000 as our character limit, and you can now use that to your heart's content when you send in your state dataset files. That information does show in the change log in the commit message section of the states page as well as the updates page. So yay, and I will also be sending out an email later today about that as well to make sure everyone gets notified. Any questions about that? I love giving good news in the new year. Back to you, Casey.
thanks. Good news is always welcomed. Always welcomed. Does anyone else have anything they would like to bring up or had some questions about anything? Otherwise, we'll move on to our vendor breakout rooms.